Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Development Diaries. This is a show where we interview leaders, innovators, change makers, movers and shakers from across the real estate development sector, learning about their career journeys, proudest moments, lessons learned along the way, and advice to their younger you. We also find out what excites them most about the real estate sector right now. I'm your host, John Guest, founder of Henry James Search and the Rebels Community, a group of good humans in real estate who come together to move the industry forward and challenge the status quo. On this episode of Development Diaries, I'm delighted to be joined by Anna Strongman, CEO of Oxford University Development, non-exec director for the Government Property Agency and former managing partner at Argent. Anna, welcome to the show. Great to have you with us today.
Thank you very much, John.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to share some of your lessons learned with the listeners. So we like to start Development Diaries by going back to the beginning of your career. Could you tell us a little bit more about how you ended up in the wonderful world of real estate? Was it something that was written in the stars, or were there a few sliding doors moments along the way?
That's a very good question. I think mine was more an instinct and a general interest, which led me into the property world. So I had quite an unconventional sort of route in. I studied history at university and economic history. And then I actually got a scholarship to go to Japan, where I learnt Japanese, and I worked in a think tank in Japan looking at economic development and policy. So I think that gave me a broad interest in sort of economic development, in evolution of cities, long-term trends in country development. And when I came back to the UK, I felt, well, I don't really know my own country. So I went to Scotland and I worked for DTZ, which doesn't exist anymore, but I worked for DTZ in Edinburgh, which I really enjoyed. And I looked at economic development. I looked at property and real estate surveys. I was very much the sort of street leather, so going around my clipboard, doing lots of sort of surveys of different bits of the city. And I just was fascinated, again, in cities and how they were evolving, how that related to how the economy was evolving, what it meant for property and tangible assets. I then got a job back in London for the MOD, which was, I guess, pursuing that policy area of my interest. But I found it quite far removed from the action in a funny sort of way. I think MOD would be right at the coalface of that. But for me, it was very sort of policy led. And so I went back to economic development and planning, town planning, and worked for Arup in their planning and economic development team, which was fascinating. Again, I worked on projects in Falmouth, in Wigan, across national projects, and I worked on some really interesting major planning applications, including King's Cross. And I really enjoyed that, again, that sense of how cities were evolving, what the planning policy frameworks were for that, but also how planning applications were responding. It was at a time when there was kind of an evolution of best practice around these major sites, led by my colleagues at Argent, Roger Madeline, Robert Evans, and I really enjoyed being part of that. So when planning was secured at King's Cross, I was approached by Argent to work for them as they expanded their team to drive forward development. And that was my opportunity to really move into client-side development and to really start driving forward delivery. And I that really appealed to me because, again, it was that sort of instinct to get closer to the action and to get closer to delivery, to get closer to decision making. And I loved working on these big research projects and on planning applications and working with developers to take those forward. But I wanted to be the one in the driving seat. So that's why I made the move to work for a client. And from that point on, I was very lucky to join a growing business. So when I joined Argent, it was 35 people. And then in 13 years I worked there, it grew to 200 people. And in that time, I was given the opportunity by very effective management team who were able to give a range of opportunities to the team. So I worked across property management, estate management, asset management, development management, investment management, and then running a services business as managing partner on King's Cross, range of different assets, retail, mixed use estates, residential. So fantastic opportunity, and I've loved every minute of working in property. And then 5 years ago, I was really interested in taking on a new challenge, exploring new areas in property, pushing myself further. So I took a big move to leave, at the time, Related Argent, and to run Oxford University Development, which is a joint venture between Oxford University and Legal & General. It's a public-private partnership, which is really a much used, a much explored concept in property and in public policy arenas, but is actually quite challenging to make work on the ground. So I really wanted to take on that challenge. I wanted to do it within the innovation ecosystem and explore that really critical part of our economy and what role real estate would play within that. I wanted to work outside of London and explore a different dynamic. Yes, proved it's been very interesting in all of those different areas, and I've learned a whole new set of skills, a whole new set of areas, and actually that brings with it a whole new network of individuals and leads and partners. So it's been very interesting evolution within that wider property sector.
Yeah, and lots of variety, not just in position, but also in place. Going from Edinburgh to Japan, back to the UK, to Falmouth, to Wigan, to London, King's Cross, then to Oxford. So I'm sure there's learnings that you can take from all of those that come back into the next project. I was going to ask you about engineering the transition into development, but it sounds like it might not have been your choice, that they said, we like working with you, you liked working with them already. Was it quite a simple decision at that point to make the move across? I know you said you wanted a bit more autonomy and to drive decisions. Was it kind of pretty straightforward at that time in your career?
I think the move from Arup to Argent was quite a big step. I have been a consultant for, I think it was probably about 4.5 years at that stage. And as I say, I really enjoyed it. I love the people I work. People at Arup were so smart and brought a real range of perspectives to quite challenging problems. They also had a really strong sense of purpose and a sense of really making sure that their advice would have a positive impact. Very smart people. And I like the variety, but I got to a point where I thought, well, I either want to do really in-depth research or I want to go and follow up on my reports and actually make those recommendations in the report happen, or make all of the potential that we write about in our planning applications when we're making the case for retail, for example, actually happen and be realised for the developers and also for local communities. So it was a real decision. I mean, looking back on it, it was like, wow, that's quite a fork in the road, academia or working for a property developer. I mean, they are on other sides of the spectrum. And I thought, you know what, I'm just a person of action. I like making things happen. And I just thought, I'm going to go and work for Argent, people who I really respected, I liked, and the project itself, King's Cross, which at the time, I think it, it was still a very run-down part of the city. I think the potential was recognised, but it was seen as quite a daunting task. So it was brave in that sense. But I just thought I'll go for it, give it a go, which I did. When I joined Argent, I felt that it was important to build up my understanding of property and real estate finance. So I knew a lot about planning, planning policy and development control, but I wanted to have more tools at my disposal around real estate finance. So I did a master's at City in property valuation and real estate finance. That was an evening class for a couple of years. And I said to Argent, I'll come and work for you, but will you sponsor me in this? And they did, to their credit. Absolutely supportive and really encouraged myself and colleagues to do that. And that was a very worthwhile thing to do because it gave me the tools and the understanding, but also it gave me the language and the phraseology really to be able to really get stuck into the full spectrum of real estate.
Yeah, I feel sometimes people earlier in their real estate career, it should come with like its own dictionary for acronyms and phrases and what means the same thing and what doesn't.
Yeah, and it's often very simple. It's like every sector likes its language. It likes its kind of phraseology. So to be able to understand that and not be intimidated by it, and to utilize it effectively, I think is quite important.
Yeah, and I think sometimes asking the question, even if you think you half know the answer, getting someone else's perspective on it, getting them to explain it to you again, either shows you that they really understand it or look at it in a different way, or really they're struggling as well. So that can be quite a useful technique. Did you, going back to education, having had a bit more life experience, having traveled a bit, worked for a while, how did you find that? Did you find it an easier experience? Was it harder? Was it just different?
Yeah, I mean, there's no denying that going to evening classes 3 nights a week after work and then working on a Sunday with your Parry's tables and all that sort of stuff for 2 years was hard work. As I say, my employer was very supportive. It's excellent. I love an exam. I'm not going to deny it. So I put my hand up for every exam going. So I didn't have to do any coursework. Yeah, it was hard work, but it was good. I think I appreciated the range of people in the classes as well because they were from other real estate firms. So it was great to get to know what other people were doing. and it was it's nice to be working in the field that you are studying in, because you can see the relevance and you can apply the knowledge almost straight away, really. So that is quite motivational. Yeah, I mean, I'm very pleased I did it. I enjoyed it. It was hard work. But it was definitely a good move.
So you bet on the people and you bet on the vision. You thought, what have I got to lose? Let's make this happen. Must have been an amazing time to join a business like Argent in some of their earlier days. I think you said 35 people when you joined. Looking back at your time there, what would you say are some of your career highlights? What did you enjoy the most? What are you most proud of?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, and obviously working on King's Cross, fantastic scheme. And because I'd worked on the planning application from about 2003, and I left in 2020, it's a long time to work on a project. I mean, some of my colleagues worked on it even longer, and these projects take a long time. But it was fantastic to see a project through that length of time, because I think you really understand the different cycles or different stages of those complex schemes. So I think overall that was a highlight. I think, I mean, obviously working with my colleagues who I thought very different, diverse group of people, very non-hierarchical, very smart. That was a highlight without a doubt, and I've kept in touch with lots of them, and I really value them as friends and as advisors in many cases. And working for a business which suited my personality. I think in all careers you have to find the right cultural fit often, and also the right shape of an institution. So is it a small business, a big business? Does it have lots of structure, not much structure? And when I joined Argent, it was very fluid and very unstructured and very empowering. So those sorts of organisations can be challenging for some people, but maybe because of my early experiences of studying history, where I had one lecture a week, or going to Japan, where I had to sort of survive in quite a different culture. For me, that was a really good structure, because I had the space to explore and come up with the ideas and drive things forward, and was very empowered to do so. And that really suited me, and I really thrived in that environment. Not for everyone, but it was a good fit for me. I think in terms of sort of tangible property outputs, I think setting up the estate management, the structure, and then building the team, taking on responsibility for asset management and the curation of all the ground floor, as well as events and marketing, public art, and creating a destination at King's Cross was a big highlight. I was the development lead for Coal Drops Yard. Again, I worked with fantastic colleagues, Morwenna and Craig there. So it was very much a team effort. That was a fantastic project to work on. Personally, writing the plan and then 5 years later cutting the ribbon was again a brilliant opportunity to see through a development from start to finish, quite a multifaceted one. Working with colleagues in America, Related, on build to rent business plans, very interesting because they're sort of global experts in that. Being part of the bid team, winning Break Cross South, another highlight. And then being managing partner from Argent and working out, again with brilliant colleagues, how to evolve the business to be fit for purpose was another highlight of working there.
Such a cool place. Remember having a few hours between meetings once just to walk around, and it's hard to even imagine what it was before, apart from going back and Googling some of the previous pictures. But what's been created there, it's a project that lots of people speak to as being at the very top of the reasons why you'd want to work in real estate development or placemaking. So, must make you super proud. And it's interesting the point you made before that around cultural fit and trying to find a business that best fits your personality. It's actually not something that people probably give enough thought to when they're navigating their career. I ask people all the time, what's most important to you? And I think where property is quite tangible and you can go and see it, feel it, touch it, experience it, culture is like a really intangible thing. People don't always give enough thought to where my strengths would lie best. Is that, as you say, in a smaller business with more autonomy, where my job spec maybe has no edges, you have to go left and right? Is it somewhere where actually I can be part of a larger machine and just do that job really well? More generalists, more specialists? So thanks for sharing that. Have you ever thought, and I'm glad this didn't happen, but have you ever thought about, if you didn't have a successful career in real estate and development, what you might have done instead?
Well, I considered a number of kids. I mean, at one point, I loved history so much. I was, I was going to do a PhD in history. And then again, I looked out of the window and I thought, I want a bit more action. I've loved various elements of the retail, of the property world that I've worked in. So occasionally thought, should I get deeper into retail, for example? So I sort of explored different things along the way, but I think there's something very addictive about property. I think it is the tangible element of it, and for me, I like the full range of property. So the sort of developer, owner, operator model, where you can have a vision and then you have got the ability to see through that vision. And that's an imperfect world, because often investors want to exit, or developers want to exit, or you have to be flexible and change your plans along the way. But I think having that North Star and having that ability to influence the landscape for the better, as I say, that doesn't always work out. But the possibility of doing that, to me, is a very compelling offer, and that has satisfied me through all the different projects I've worked on. So project I'm super proud of, we've built 80 graduate homes in South Oxford. They are simple 2 up, 2 down houses in terraces, but we've created a new typology where there's no private gardens, but they're built around courtyards with common gardens. And that's created a lot of density on the site. So we've managed to build more houses, but it's actually also created fantastic community spirit within the development. It's a very popular place to live. And we really sweated the small stuff. We really thought through the detail of the design, really thought carefully about orientation, internal layouts, views through the development, practical issues such as sort of deliveries and access. And it's a fantastic development, and people who live in it say it's the best graduate scheme, best university accommodation they've ever lived in. And to me, I'm as proud as that small scheme in South Oxford as I am of Coal Drops or King's Cross, because we have transformed that part of Oxford in a very positive way.
Yeah, which is the impact that our profession can have, whether it be more macro or micro scale. It's funny that thinking about your career journey from studying history to creating places of the future, it's kind of gone from the past into betting on what humans are going to do next and trying to create places that they'll love. You talked a little bit about managing various stakeholders along the way, and sometimes those stakeholders looking for different things or having slightly different opinions. But fast forwarding to today, CEO of Oxford University Developments. What a great role. Could you share with people that are a bit less familiar about the JV and the partnership, what that entails, what the focus is, what the mission is, and what have you been up to?
Yeah. So Oxford University Development is a joint venture between the university and Legal & General. And our purpose is to create the infrastructure to support the future of the university. And by that, I mean high quality, affordable housing for graduates and for early career researchers. It means high quality academic buildings, and it means commercial R&D space to support a really vibrant innovation ecosystem in the city. We want to do that in a way which supports the future of the city as well. So thinking very much about how our portfolio can have a broader positive impact. And that sort of broader development mission is combined with a requirement to drive long-term sustainable returns for Legal & General and their pensioners and for various other parts of their business. So we're really trying to combine that sort of delivery of broader infrastructure to support the university and the city in a way which also drives long-term returns. And that's really at the crux of our public-private partnership. We're delivering across 7 different sites in Oxford. So again, having the scale to transform parts of the city. We're building a new village up at Begbrook, 2,000 homes, 1.5 million square foot of R&D space, 3 new schools, a new country park, a new urban quarter at Oseney Mead, 10 minutes walk from the railway station. It's an extension of the city, car-free, again, anchored by the university, very much an innovation-led development. And we're also building a new academic building in the city centre. We've completed our housing scheme down in South Oxford at Iffley. We've built some lab-enabled buildings up at Begbrook. And we've built a new academic building, Life and Mind building, bringing the departments of zoology and biology together. So real range, different types of buildings, different types of assets, different infrastructure. But really it's about supporting the future of the university and doing that in a way which drives returns for Legal & General.
And what a highlights reel already. Loads of variety, some amazing places. You almost made it sound a bit straightforward then.
Yeah, I think it's definitely not straightforward. I think highlights are, well, it's the quality of the developments we've delivered to date. So as I say, we've built 3 fantastic schemes already within a 5-year period. We've achieved outline planning permission for our new village up at Begbrook. We have started on a new major engineering campus at Oseney Mead, the new urban quarter we're developing. And we have brought forward proposals for various other sites. I think the second highlight would be, I think we have been seen as a positive disruptor in the city. So we have tried to bring best practice in property development in what we're doing at the city. So, for example, a very extensive consultation with a listening focus, focus on community engagement and taking the surrounding communities with us, very high quality designs in the development, very strong targets around sustainability, and also being very supportive in the city and talking in a partnership voice with others. And I think I'm proud of our ability to have really driven forward and brought new practices to the city. I'd say the third achievement is really working with the shareholders Both are big, complex institutions, and we have managed to bridge that gap, align interests, keep the shareholders focused on moving forward. And I think that has been a real achievement, particularly in a context of quite challenging economics and quite challenging development economics, and being able to keep everyone moving forwards in that context. I'm very proud of doing that with our team.
I think, you mentioned it there. It's been challenging times, and in some ways, having institutional, more patient capital is what a lot of people are looking for. And joint ventures, public-private partnerships. I think not many people will argue that we need more of these to bring forward schemes, be that housing or, as you say, mixed use, regen placemaking. Sometimes priorities, I'm sure, align. Sometimes they're different, as we've said before. What do you think are the key skills needed by a development professional in today's market with some of those challenges? And would you say that's different, or what skills do you think are unique when it comes to managing these larger schemes that no doubt take a bit more patience, slightly longer to achieve, but on the other side can have more impact?
I think that's a very good question. I think as a development professional, obviously you've got to have core technical skills. I think that's really important. And you've got to keep enhancing those and developing those throughout your career. I think in this day and age, having the ability to apply those skills in a very flexible and sometimes innovative way is really important. And to be able to retain that flexibility, having resilience to do that, and combining that with a kind of relentless determination to get stuff done is really critical. And I don't think that's going to change. I don't think the world is suddenly going to become easy peasy. I think a world of uncertainty is here to stay. So we've got to remain adaptable, flexible, resilient, determined. I think there are more and more demands on real estate professionals to be able to manage the full spectrum of demands, from political awareness to partnership building to community engagement to effective PR to contemporary marketing, through to harnessing AI, through to creating very efficient but compelling and attractive buildings. Those demands are only getting broader and deeper. So I think we've got to accept that and work out how we can rise to the challenge. I think the sector is interesting because in some ways it's becoming more specialist. So you're seeing consolidation, but also the emergence of lots of kind of niche specialists, those kind of mid-sized generalist developers. I think it's proving much harder for them. So whether that means for professionals that they have to decide what to focus on and develop real expertise, or whether they are prepared to be part of that broader consolidation, is probably, again, it goes back to sort of a kind of cultural fit and a choice for individuals. I think public-private partnerships will have to be part of the future. I probably would say that because I'm dealing, I'm sort of steeped in that world. So I think understanding and unlocking the powers of those partnerships is, it's not for everyone, but it is something our sector needs to have the skills to do.
I think there are some people out there at the moment that are probably a bit like you, and that they want action, they want to make things happen, feel like they're in a part of their career where that should be happening, but having to be a bit more patient than perhaps they'd like. Things are taking a little bit longer. If that was the younger you, Anna, what would your advice be, knowing what you know now?
I think it's a tough decade for real estate. I still think there's enormous potential, and there'll always be a role for real estate to play. I think if you get excited about that, then you have to persevere. I think passion and patience has got a lot to has got an important part to play here. But also I think you've got to be impatiently patient. So you've got to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, flexing and flexing and flexing, and really driving to have results. So if you don't want to do that, it's too hard. Go and do something different. Because as I say, I think it will be a rocky road for a while. What I would say is, out of every challenging period, there are opportunities, and I think being open-minded to what those opportunities are, but also being willing to innovate and think about new structures, potentially on a personal level for individuals, taking on jobs that they may not necessarily have thought when they set out is what they wanted to do, but actually being open-minded to taking those things on, and then making the most of those jobs once you're in position, is definitely worth considering, because I don't think it's a world where there's a sort of get on the ladder and keep climbing upwards. I think it's a squiggly line, really. So I think that's worth considering wherever you are in your career, that it's worth being open-minded about what those opportunities could be and how you could utilize them, really, to achieve what's important to you.
Well, hopefully no one's come into the sector because they think it's easy and there's lots of quick wins, and some of those things apply to other sectors too, right? The world is changing really fast. Technological advancements only going to get quicker. Companies are grappling with how to use AI and what does that even mean for the future of the workforce. Property companies are then trying to predict human behavior about where people are going to work, live, play. As you say, it's never going to go away. So it's weathered every storm that's come before.
Yeah, and I think, development, these are big ticket items. They're, even the quickest development is going to take a couple of years. These are long-term projects. My dad was a military test pilot, so he led the development of the A400M, which is a new Hercules, big transporter airplane. And he worked on that for 15 years, and did the first flight, and then delivered the first airplanes across the world. And, that was a rocky road for him. So he had to make, lots of changes in the airplane, lots of technical changes, technical challenges, lots of commercial challenges, because those really are big capex outlays. But, he achieved an amazing outcome, built a brilliant airplane, which is now deployed worldwide. And I think, if you're going to deliver something which changes things, whether it's at a local level, a national level, a global level, it ain't going to be easy, but there's a big prize at the end. So you've got to keep at it and work out if that's something compelling enough for you.
Yeah, I think there's some great advice in there. think there's a saying, nothing worth doing is easy. You mentioned resilience, you mentioned relentless determination, passion and patience. I think these are all things that I think others have mentioned, maybe use similar, slightly different wording, but staying in the game. I remember during COVID in a previous business, we had jumpers printed which said, "A smooth sea never made a skillful sailor." So I think there is an element of some of these challenges actually being formative for people's careers. And if it was really easy, you might not learn so many things along the way. If we can flip it into a positive, if you build places, build businesses, build teams in a market like this, you're going to have to build it right. We've talked about some of the challenges. We know it's not easy. Sounds like you're making things work regardless. What does excite you about the next 5 years in real estate? Where do you think the opportunities do lie?
I think there's a lot of exciting things to come. I think there's a real opportunity to get a better understanding of how we're going to deliver major regeneration, the infrastructure to support the economy, the real estate to support new businesses, new startups, the homes to allow everyone access to a comfortable home life. I think there's an opportunity to build better understanding between the public sector and what investors need to invest, what developers need to build, but also hopefully a better understanding within our community about what is important to the public sector and what they require to make the case for joint working, joint partnerships, and to build trust and more effective working between the two. And I think we can do that. It will unlock enormous opportunity. That's going to take time, and it's going to take a lot of effort and investment to do that. And I think it will require quite innovative answers and responses. But I, in a way, they're partnerships built out of necessity. But through that necessity, there is opportunity. So I'm excited about that. And I think that's a national opportunity. I'm excited about the great potential of the Oxford-Cambridge corridor and the Golden Triangle, so Oxford, Cambridge, London, and the other centres of excellence across the country: Birmingham, Manchester, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Newcastle, Bristol, and many others. And the ideas and the passion of those people with those ideas to have an impact through commercialization of those inventions and that discovery research. And I've met some truly inspiring people in Oxford, people who have invented life-changing, world-changing inventions, which they have then developed businesses around, very successful global businesses. And I think we have a real opportunity now in the country to really harness the power of those individuals and those research groups to build a genuine innovation ecosystem. There is already a genuine innovation ecosystem, but to build a broader based one. I think that will require some moves at national policy level around tax incentives, around R&D investment, around immigration policy and attracting global talent, around procurement, particularly in the NHS and MOD, and around energy and the cost of energy. And I think it's imperative that happens soon. We are in a fight for the future here. We're in a fight for the future so that my kids, other kids, are going to have a job here and can live here. So that's going to require work and pace. Otherwise, those ideas will be commercialized overseas and we will become a great incubator of the world, but not actually realizing many of the benefits. So I'm very excited about that potential. I've seen it, but I think it needs action. And it's not a 20-year plan. It's a 2 to 3 year plan. And I guess the third thing that I'm excited about is the talent that we have in our business and meeting new, young, passionate people and their drive to deliver different forms of development. And I think it's a challenge for a sector who's under pressure to keep investing in new talent and young people. But I think it's really important that we do so and we listen to ideas. I was really struck when I worked with Related, how they were developing a shopping centre. I'm not sure they want me to call it a shopping centre, but a shopping, effectively a retail development in New York, a really brilliant one. And they had somebody from every decade in their retail team because they wanted to make sure that they had that breadth of understanding of their customer. I thought, that's such a good idea. Get a real broad range of people and ages and talents into your team so you can understand your customers, and that is critical to success. So I'm excited about that potential, and I think we've really got to commit to unlocking it as a sector.
Well, thank you for those. Plenty to get excited about. On the second point around the innovation districts, lots of ambitious, really smart people coming out of what is one of the best education systems in the world. It's still a great country to live in and exist in, and we're trying to make sure that people feel like it's a pro-growth, pro-business, pro-ideas place to grow. I guess companies are a bit like organisms. They grow, they change shape, they split off, they do different things. Maybe going back to the public-private partnerships part, we're trying to get the public sector to do their part. We've also got to build the places for them to exist in so that they can grow their businesses and spend time with others. And I think your last point was around sharing knowledge from different generations, from different stages of businesses. Like all of this is around kind of theme of community. What do you think as a business we can be doing, or as an industry, as leaders within real estate, what's our part to play in terms of the messaging, or what small dent can we make in that for those that are listening that are inspired to take some action?
Well, I'm sure that our developments have a wider benefit. I mean, I think the first thing we're going to do is make sure that they're commercially successful, because I think if you're commercially successful, then you can create a virtuous circle around broader benefits. And if your development is designed properly, is responsible, has links to local communities, that in itself should drive success. So I think they can be a virtuous circle. So I think commercial success is imperative. I think there's a lot around being the enemy of misinformation. So I think we all as a sector need to go out and speak to people and not hide behind our screens or anywhere else we might want to hide. And that can be tough sometimes, but I think we all have to go out there and talk to people. And then I think we have to actually deliver on our promises. When we say we're going to do something, we've got to do it. And that's not always easy, because economics change, or ownership changes, or people change. But if we want to make the case for the positive role developers can play, we've got to deliver on our promises. Why does that matter? I think it matters because there's a lot of people who don't support growth. They don't support change. I've seen that in action in Oxford. And I think we have to make the case for growth and for the change that that brings, and why that is important for the country. Again, you could say, well, is that really my role as a developer? I think if you want to have any future in your business, you better start helping make the case. But I mean, there's all sorts of other things that people can do, and lots of developers do fantastic things. I'm working with Artem at Mission Street. They are really a very responsible developer and work lots with the local community. I could cite a Related Argent, brilliant scheme up at Brent Cross with a whole range of elements to the scheme which really welcome in local people, and they've delivered on their promises up there. British Land at Canada Water, lots of broader commitments that they've made happen. So there are lots of people doing good things, and I think we just got to keep doing that and making the case.
And even more so at the moment where, public perception is, a lot of this goes back to politics. Politics takes its view from public perception, because if the public don't vote for you, you're not going to be in the seat to be able to do anything in the first place. Some of the misinformation that's out there, I think a lot of people in the industry think it's so wild that there's no point in even commenting, because no one would ever believe that. Whereas actually, if they do, sometimes they do, they haven't worked in the industry, why would they? So I do feel your point is super valid about each person taking a slight step forward, challenging it, getting out and talking to people, not necessarily winning every seat, but certainly trying to win some of the marginal seats.
Yeah, well, also we spend a lot of time with our local community contacts. Doesn't believe some of them don't necessarily support our development, but at least they recognise that we are prepared to have a conversation, listen to their views, and if we can change, or if it's a good idea, or if there's something else we can do, we'll do it.
Some people just want to be heard.
Yeah.
So switching gears a little bit, Anna, before we wrap up, it's tradition on the podcast for each guest to answer one that's been left for them by the guest before. So your question was left by Bearbell Schuett, and she would like to ask you, what do you think the key focus should be in the industry that would really make a leap forward towards a much more sustainable way of either building or then living or working in our buildings? What do you think?
I've got a real bee in my bonnet about energy costs, and that's partly because I work with Marcus, who runs BMW in Oxford, and the cost of their energy is 5 times what it is in their plant in South Carolina, and it's very hard for BMW to make the case to stay in Oxford, although they really are committed and they're doing their best. And high energy costs impacts everything. So it impacts the cost of building, it impacts the cost of living, it impacts economic productivity, economic competitiveness, inward investment. And I'm fully behind the push for renewable energy and enhancing the amount of energy we get from renewables and from and phasing out fossil fuels. And I understand there's all sorts of issues with storage and with grid capacity and with local opposition to pylons and all sorts of problems. But I would actually like to see the drive for renewables result in lower energy prices soon, tomorrow, not in 2050. And I actually think this is a super critical issue for the UK, and there's not enough talk about it. And if we could unlock cheaper energy through renewables, rather than fixing a price, which is actually quite high, to fund the infrastructure, but will result in quite high costs for some time to come, I'm just not sure that's going to answer our problems. So I would like to see, I think if we could unlock that, even partly unlock it, that would be a big step forward.
So tackle it a bit more head on now rather than kicking it down the road.
Well, I'm sympathetic to the government. They're trying to work out how they can, through underwriting energy costs or committing to high levels of energy costs, they can unlock private sector investment into energy infrastructure. But by committing to those energy costs to unlock the investment, are we then getting trapped for the next 15 years in quite high costs? And if we are, we are going to just lose significant economic agents within the country, and manufacturing and advanced manufacturing, and it's going to impact build costs and so on.
So which goes back to that talent piece and keeping the people and the companies here.
Yeah, 100%.
Some food for thought there for all of us, I think. And I like these big questions for that exact reason. It kind of takes you somewhere else from the day to day. In return for tackling that one, Anna, would you like to leave a question for the next guest to answer?
So my question is, real estate is obviously integral to the economy. It's an economic driver in itself, but it's also a facilitator, an enabler, and a responder to levels of demand for housing, demand for commercial space, demand from customers, for shops, restaurants, bars, etc. So I'm very interested to know what the top 3 things the next, I don't want to say podcast victim, I'm not quite sure what you call them, podcast person. I'm very interested in the top
podcast legend, I think.
Podcast legend. What that person, what their top 3 things they would do to stimulate demand. And they can pick a sector, housing or retail, or commercial, or they can be across the sector. But we have to stimulate demand for the broader good of the country and drive that good growth. But we also need that for real estate. So I'd like to know what their magic solutions are to that.
Sounds like a nice, easy one. But again, plenty to get people thinking. Anna, thank you so much for joining us today. You had a fantastic career. It's gone in lots of different directions. I'm really excited to see what you go on to do next with Oxford, and that you're practicing some of that resilience and keeping pushing on. So thank you for joining us. Hope you found it valuable.
Yeah,
we'll catch up soon.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care. Speak soon.
Bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode. Your support means the world. Please feel free to like, share, or pass the podcast on to a friend or colleague. Do drop me a line with any suggested topics you'd like us to cover on future episodes and recommendations of guests that you would love to see us interview. Till next time, go well.